Persephone Foundation Field Report, File 4. Now, as mentioned, we have various other factions still left to go over in the Para Echoes timeline. However, many of these factions are not quite as powerful as the Allied nations or Soviet Union, but they do have the capability and even the possibility of affecting the world stage given time and development. We will cover some of these factions now. Bear in mind, these factions may not seem powerful at first glance, but they have more than enough power, political capital, and scientific knowledge to become a major force should they choose to. Now, the first is the African League. The African League is a pan-African movement formed post-colonially after the Allied nations' member states realized that colonialism was doing them more harm than good. They believe in creating a uplifted Africa that can stand as equals to Europe, the Soviet Union, and all other powers. However, presently their government is still in the earliest stages of reforming after World War III, after allying with the Empire of the Rising Sun. They also have a bit of a problem organizing their military. Their military is capable, the problem is that they're still trying to organize it on a federal level. Next is the Technocratic Combine, which, from what our descriptions have, is actually two different entities. The United Technate are a federal organization of nation-states in Central America formed after World War II. Their stated goal is to use all measures of science to advance mankind's position to a new golden age. They seem to believe that World War II threw off humanity's development, and it is their job to bring it back on track. However, the Technate also plays host to something called the Columbia Future Society, which we believe had a heavy hand in setting up the Technate's government during their early times. However, they do seem to have a love-hate relationship with the Allied nations. They see the Allies as well-meaning, but wholly misguided in how they should carry out their advancements. Now, next is the Industrial Guild. The Industrial Guild appears to be a union of several leftist guerrilla groups in Indonesia. They are protesting against the Pahit Dictatorate, which they believe, and from what our information states, is being claimed to have committed various war crimes on civilians in an attempt by the government to try and wipe out communist guerrillas. Now, whether or not these claims are true or not remains to be substantiated. The Allied nations themselves have had no corroborating reports from any other observers. However, the Pahits are still applying for member status in the Allied nations, so it is possible that with enough time these claims can be either confirmed or refuted. Now, the Guild possesses a massive number of forces. However, their equipment leaves much to be desired. We have found from the reports that their equipment is at best on par with the early World War I era. Now, whether this is because these weapons are easier to maintain, easier to manufacture, or just because the Guild has nothing else, we have no information on as of yet. Also, their method of government seems to be a commune system, or in the well-known words of Monty Python, they're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. They vote on all positions of power, from squad leader all the way up to the leadership of their movement. Now, after the Guild, there is the Southern Contingent. The Southern Contingent is a confederation of Australia, New Zealand, and several other oceanic states, with the express goal of functioning on their own without interference or assistance from the Allied nations or any other body. Now, it seems here in World War III, Australia was invaded by the Empire of the Rising Sun and was forced to enact what we know in our timeline as the Brisbane Line Plan. Now, the Brisbane Line Plan in our own timeline was heavily theoretical and even thought not to exist, just as a rumor. However, here, the Brisbane Line Plan was enacted with heavy casualties given to northeastern Australia. The area was basically eliminated, and they are slowly trying to rebuild it now. Now, the contingent does have a benefit in that it was the host for the testing bed for all Allied nations' projects and prototypes. However, during World War III, this area was abandoned as the Allies had to fight back against the Soviets in Europe. This gives the contingent multiple weapon systems that are well above what the Allies are used to, and all other forces can even imagine. However, the problem is that these systems are still relatively untested and experimental. We do have reports that the Allies have accepted contingent assistance in Vietnam in the form of small special operations advisors, but there are also rumors that the contingent is active in Indonesia. In what capacity, we cannot tell yet. Now, after the contingent, there is the Unionist organization. Now, I would like to make this clear. According to these files, When I speak of the Unionists, unless it is stated otherwise, I am speaking about the American Unionist movement, but there are other branches active in other parts of the world in para-echoes. Now, the Unionist movement apparently seems to be a mixture of a political party, a civil defense group, and a neighborhood organization. It seems that in America, the Democrats and Republicans died very quickly after the presidency of John F. Kennedy. It seems instead that there are the Federalists, who, as mentioned previously, are part of the Confederate organization now, and the Unionists. Now, the Federalists seem to be a more left-leaning group with social tendencies, while the Unionists are heavily focused on conservative social and political issues. Now, the Unionists are allied with the Allied nations, and they have a very strong hold over the eastern seaboard of the United States, along with several manufacturing centers designed to give them a major boost against the Confederacy. Now, after the Unionists, we have the Greater Indian Commonwealth. Now, the Greater Indian Commonwealth is led by India, and here is the reason why, in our previous reports on the Allies, they are an in-name-only member state. It seems that India has quickly undertaken a quasi-colonial outlook on its own members. It created Khalistan just for the purpose of quieting the Sikh minority and keeping them from causing trouble. It overran Pakistan during the Kashmir conflict and created essentially a puppet state, along with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and any other nation it sets its sights on. At present, they are also active in Yemen and in Somalia. This has brought them into conflict with an organization known as the Arabian Coalition, but also into a near-shooting war with the African League. We are monitoring the situation as best we can. There is no active war yet, but there are several border skirmishes, and there could be conflict at any time if the League feels that the Commonwealth is pressing from Somalia into Ethiopia. Now, following the Commonwealth, we have the Cybernetic Federation, and the Cybernetic Federation is very interesting. The Federation utilizes what is known as CyberSyn to help regulate its own government and economy in the para-echoes timeline. Active in Chile during the 1970s, shortly before the coup by Pinochet, the CyberSyn system was designed to essentially give all citizens an active voice in government. The plan was to hook up every home with a Cinco console. That way, every home could be directly connected to the local government, state government, and federal government if necessary. The plan was that every citizen would report with Cinco all problems related to their lives, police, maintenance, so on and so forth. In para-echoes, that system seems to have functioned perfectly. However, due to World War III and other issues at the timeline, such as a massive earthquake, it does appear that the CyberSyn system has also become heavily militarized. Now, the Federation has a very relatively weak military. All citizens are considered members of a local militia force, known as the Volunteers, but the issue is that their technology is lagging sorely behind. They're perfect at networking their cities and buildings, but when it comes to actually designing tanks and aircraft, the Federation leaves much to be desired. Finally, we have another weird report here. It seems that the alien reports mentioned in our first field report have been semi-substantiated. Looking at these reports, there have been sightings of strange aircraft. However, as with the reports of robots and strange cults, all files have been heavily redacted. All we have are locations and incidents, but nothing further than that. It seems as if the Allies have a very heavy tendency to try and deny that strange things exist, even when they utilize time travel and holes in space-time to teleport to where they need to be. It is possible that they won't admit that the world is far weirder than they have anticipated. Now, at the present, these are all the major factions. There are also several other minor factions that are powerful in a regional sense, but unlike the factions mentioned here, are unable to truly project their power on the world stage if they wanted to. Now, we will continue to observe several of these factions. Our next report, however, will try to focus on several of these minor factions, as well as discussing the Soviet Union in the para-echoes timeline. We will try and find an agent who can take a place in the Soviet power structure. However, at present, we are having difficulty selecting an agent skilled and suitable enough for such a position. We will update as needed. Field Team signing out.